All right. Well, welcome everyone. I appreciate you joining us this evening. I know it can be a little difficult after a day of many folks being in Zoom meetings to yet again get on a Zoom, but I'm sure you're all thrilled to be able to hear the knowledge of Alleyah Miner, class of 16. Alleyah is a third generation home buyer with Republic Real Estate Group. And I'm going to turn it over to Alleyah. I do ask the following, that you remain muted throughout the presentation. We ask that you do turn off your camera because it can be a little distracting to see other folks as Alleyah is speaking. If you have a question, feel free to put it in the chat feature at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a little kind of like voice bubble at the bottom that says chat. You click on that and you can throw your question in there. We will address the questions at the end of Alleyah's talk, but feel free to populate the chat with questions as she's speaking. With that, I turn it over to Alleyah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alleyah Miner. I'm super excited to be here today and explain the home buying process to you all in a way that's super easy to understand. And hopefully after you feel really empowered to go ahead with your own home purchase. And I'm super excited. So let's get started. This is Demystifying Home Buying with Alleyah Miner. I am Alleyah Miner. I'm Lafayette College, class of 2016. I was also a scholarship recipient. I was Posse DC 7. Also, I want to thank my past client and another Posse recipient, Daniela Colon, for making this connection and helping put this workshop together. So thank you so much, Daniela and Janine, for all of your help with this. I'm with my broker. Every real estate agent has a broker that they're with, unless they are a broker. And my broker is Republic Real Estate Group. It's a residential and commercial broker working on some pretty large development projects in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. I switched to this brokerage because I really wanted to learn commercial real estate, and it really has been an enriching experience to be able to help clients with the full breadth of what they're doing. A small business owner, I can help them find a space and help them buy a home. So I really have been enjoying that. I am a native of gorgeous Prince George's County, and I am born and raised here. I actually still live in Prince George's County. I'm a third generation realtor licensed in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. So my mother was a realtor, my grandmother was a realtor and investor, and my father had an appraisal company growing up. So I've been doing this since there were printed out MapQuest directions, following my parents around, and my mom showing me how to do CMAs and teaching me really important real estate concepts really early. So there was a very small learning curve when I first got into the business. Like I mentioned, my grandmother was an investor, so I also have that experience of property ownership. She passed some properties down to us, and I manage all of the properties. I'm a landlord for the properties, so I like to be able to share that experience with my clients who are interested in investing and exploring that side of real estate as well, because it really is life-changing to build that generational wealth for your family. And I'm so appreciative for my grandmother who started and did that for us. I'm also a certified real estate negotiation expert. They call it Renee. So this, on top of natural negotiation skills and watching my grandmother, who was Costco obsessed, go back and forth with the manager about getting discounts on floor models. I already had that natural negotiation experience, but I got the certification just to learn some specific real estate concepts and be able to help my clients better. I've been licensed for 5 years, and I've done millions of dollars in transactions in residential real estate in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I love working with first-time home buyers because it's just so empowering, just to guide people and really help them have a smooth experience with their first home purchase. There's just nothing like it. So I work with first-time home buyers, investors, home sales and purchases, rentals, and also commercial real estate. So I'm just going to go over a few benefits of home ownership. Why are we here? Why is everyone even interested in buying a house? So a couple important ones to me are tax savings. So the government And the tax system really benefits home buyers. You can take a lot of tax benefits from it. Even when you sell, capital gains tax, you can get up to, for a married couple, $250,000 untaxed off of your home sale. So it's a really good place to invest your money and, and just you make an investment for the future. Also, your appreciation, historically, the price, they're not making any more land. This is about it that we have here. So your appreciation will go up. The value of your home, historically will increase over time. And that kind of brings me over to equity. One of my favorite words when I'm working with first-time home buyers, I try to make sure that we find some properties with some equity because it gives you just an extra leg up when you are purchasing. So equity is the difference between what the home is worth and what your mortgage payment is. So let's say that you put a contract on a house for, I actually just had one client who got I found a deal for her that was like $40,000 in equity because the condo was listed under value. I negotiated for even a lower price. So she got it for a condo for $299 when all of the other ones in the building are selling for $360, $380. So when your agent is able to identify deals like that in the market, it can be super beneficial for you. And that equity will take you further and give you a leg up in the market. Also, when it comes to planting your roots, you can have creative control over your house. It really is a great asset that can be passed down, as I benefited from in my family. So it really helps you plant your roots in an area. And some people feel like they're stuck because of a 30-year mortgage, but to me, I like to look at it as leverage. You can always leverage your property. You can rent it out. You can Airbnb it. You can borrow money against your property to start a business. So I like to look at all the opportunities and freedom that it allows. And also, it just makes you happy to be able to own your asset and for your money to be going to, creating more equity, lowering, making a wider gap between what the house is worth and what your loan amount is, and, doing it that way. So those are some of the benefits as to why we're even here today and why home ownership is so important. It's because it's one of the best ways to transfer wealth in your family. So this is just a short roadmap of what we're going to be going over today. I'm just going to run through it really quick. So the process looks like this. The first step I would say is meeting with a real estate professional. You can get pre-approved first, but I would say meet with your agent, meet with a good agent first, because they can save you a lot of headache in finding a good lender. So they can usually suggest a good lender because they're in the market. They work with lenders, know who's good, they know who's not. So I would typically listen to your agent in these recommendations. It's not about any financial kickbacks. The only kickback I get from my preferred lender is just knowing that the deal is going to go completely smoothly for my client. We're not going to have any issues. So you also get pre-approved, then you start searching for homes. You make an offer, you negotiate the contract, then you're in escrow, which is when you're going through the process of removing contingencies off the contract. I'm going to go into detail in this in just a little bit. And then the final details, you're going through terms with your lender, final documents, and then you go to closing. And also there's this thing called buyer's advantage, which means that the seller pays, depending on your broker, the seller pays majority of the agent's commission. So you don't have to worry about that, either all or the majority. So the very first step of the home process is the pre-approval. A lot of people, I know searching on Zillow is fun, but it'll only hurt you and the agent if you guys are searching without a pre-approval. So the pre-approval is when you submit official documentation, credit check, and your official pre-approval letter to the lender. I actually have one of my favorite preferred lenders. She's awesome, very professional, great at her job, and very personable, and super knowledgeable on the call today. So if we have any lending questions, she'll be happy to tap in and answer any questions you have on lending. So for as far as lending, a 620 or better credit score is really where you want to be. There are some loan programs with FHA where you can where you can have a 580 credit score, but that's really on the border, because when a lender does a hard pull, it typically comes in between 10 and 20% lower than not percent, I'm sorry, 10 to 20 points lower than what you may see online. I typically use like Credit Karma to keep track of my credit score. So that is a good app to use, but just always have some buffer. You don't want to be right on the edge, because it definitely, typically will come out lower. And then your debt to income ratio, you want to be 43% or less. So that is your debt divided by your income. You just want to be approved. You want to be 43% or less. So why is it important that you get pre-approved first? Because you want to know, A, how much you can afford. It doesn't help anybody if we're looking at houses that cost $800,000 and you get approved for $300,000. We want to be realistic. We want to be looking in the right price range so that nobody's disappointed and we're finding the best option for you. And remember, when you buy your first home, it's not your forever home. This is your first investment. You want to make a good investment and leverage for the future so you can make those steps to your dream home. So also, I don't know any professional realtor that is going to work with you without a pre-approval, because again, it just doesn't make sense to start without a pre-approval. And again, your realtor can give you a lender referral. And another part of that process when you're working with the real estate agent is they will ask you to sign an exclusive buyer agreement. They may ask you on your first meeting or before they write your first contract, but it's important that you create agency, because until you sign the exclusive buyers agreement, technically that agent works for the seller and they can't operate fully in your best interest. Of course, they'll have to do fiduciary duties, be honest, be fair, but for them to completely advocate for you, you have to sign that exclusive buyer's agreement. And if you feel like you're not having a good fit with an agent, make sure you completely end that relationship before moving on to the next one, just to keep things clear. It's okay if an agency relationship doesn't work out or it's not exactly the fit you want. Just make sure no double dipping. You stop one before you move on to the other. Also, it makes you desirable to sellers. No one's going to accept an offer, a contract with no pre-approval letter, because why would they do that? That means you haven't gone through the steps to vet your finances to make sure that you're approved for the property. So your very first step is going to be getting your pre-approval letter. I have some clients come to me already approved, but I like to vet their lender to make sure it's a good situation, because I have had clients who've been determined to use their lender, and it is a terrible experience because the lender doesn't communicate well, doesn't communicate quickly. These are all important things. You should be able to call your lender and always get a response, because it may be Sunday when you see a property and you need a pre-approval letter specifically for that property number, because you don't always want to submit a pre-approval letter that is over, you don't want to show that, let's say the property is 400,000, but you're approved for 450. You want to get a pre-approval letter that says 400,000. You don't necessarily want to let the seller know that you can go up to pre-approval. And pre-approval letters typically last for about 60 to 90 days, and they're pretty easy to renew. So, if you're thinking about in the next few months moving, then definitely contact the lender to get a pre-approval. Okay, so I'm going to go over just the top 3 types of loans. There are other loans that investors use, like hard money loans and all, there's different types of loans, but I'm just going to focus on the first 3 main loans. And if anybody has any specific questions about investing and investment loans, those typically have higher down payments because they're riskier for banks. But I'm just going to go over these ones to start. So just so you all know, the majority of loans are sold on the secondary market. What that means is that there's all these, they call them conforming loan requirements, like what the credit score is, what the debt to income ratio is, because the mortgage brokers are not keeping all of these loans in-house. They are vetting you for the loan to make sure that it's good to be able to sell on the secondary market. That's why after you close on a home, within about maximum 3 months, your provider who you're paying your mortgage to is going to change, because they're going to sell the loan on the secondary market. The only places that don't do that are usually credit unions, and they typically don't, credit unions typically don't offer the first time home buyer programs and benefits. So typically, if you want to do that, you would go with a regular mortgage broker, even though credit unions do. I love Navy Federal Credit Union, that's my bank, and they do give great loans. So you just weigh all your options. So conventional loans typically can be 3% down or more. If you don't want to pay what they call private mortgage insurance, which is a fee that the bank charges you if you're putting less than 20% down, so if you're putting less than 20% down, then you will have the private mortgage insurance on your mortgage payment until you get to 80% loan to value ratio. So that just means what your loan is versus what your house is worth. They will automatically remove your private mortgage insurance at 80% loan to value ratio. But a tip is that you can actually call in and ask to get it removed at 78% loan to value ratio, and some mortgage providers will do it. So check with your mortgage provider, and don't forget that 78% you can do it. They're going to wait for that extra 2% and collect that extra little bit of money. So for FHA loans, that is a government-backed loan, and typically the down payment is 3.5%. If your credit score is lower than 620, around like 580, then it'll be a higher down payment, around 5.5%. But I have had clients use it before. It's a good loan, but also the private mortgage insurance is on the FHA loan for the entire life of the loan. So even though some people start with a FHA loan, they'll refinance and out of the FHA loan, so you don't have to pay that private mortgage insurance for the entire life of your loan. As far as VA loans, for anybody who is in the military, it's a great loan program because it's 0% down. VA loans don't have to pay any down payment, so it's super beneficial and allows them to move quicker, and it's a really beneficial program, the VA loan. And another tip that I would give is to always check in your local area for first-time homebuyer programs, down payment assistance programs, and special programs for your job and field. So in the DC area, I know my buyers have benefited from the HFA. I just actually had a client get money back at closing at the table, which rarely happens, but she used DC Open Doors and DC FHA programs in combination, down payment assistance programs, and was able to actually get money back at the table. The attorney who did the closing said that happens maybe in about 1 out of 1,000 closings. So just make sure you check. There's usually special programs for lawyers, doctors, teachers, firefighters. So make sure you check your local area. And if you're in this area, DC Open Doors, Home Purchase and Assistance Program, HPAP, Maryland Mortgage Program, and then Virginia has some specific programs. Another tip is to make sure that the loan officer you're using offers the program you want. Your loan officer is not going to tell you, I'm not qualified for this program. They're just not going to mention it. So make sure you look up your programs ahead of time and make sure your loan officer is on the list. Sometimes they have to apply. Make sure that they are qualified to give you the programs that you want. Don't just leave free money on the table. All of my loan officers are qualified, but make sure that they're vetted, and even that the ones that your realtor recommends, make sure that they're qualified for the loan programs that you're interested in. So this is the first step. After you've gotten pre-approved, then I do the pre-consultation, and then after you get approved, there's another consultation where we can really get to the nitty-gritty, because you actually have the amount that you can be pre-approved for. Not that you have to go to the top of that budget. You don't have to go to the top of the budget. Sometimes I even have clients say, okay, I got approved for this amount, but I'm only comfortable paying, let's say $1,800 a month. So what my lender will do is work backwards and say, okay, for $1,800 a month, this is the home price that you want to get. Or even people who are kind of on the fence about buying, then I'll do what I call the rent replacement model, which is take their current rent amount and see what that will be in a home purchase, so that they're basically paying the same amount, but now it's a mortgage. Now they're building equity and having a little bit more value. So you're at your consultation period. So you're pre-approved and you've chosen to work with a fantastic realtor. Congrats. In your first consultation, here's some of the important things that you should discuss, that your realtor should be discussing with you. What area do you want to be in? A tip I do, I am obsessed with following development projects. So I'm on things as soon as they pop up around my area. I'm the first to know. So follow, Facebook groups, development groups for the areas that you're thinking about living in. And then you can make sure to buy, if you're buying in areas where there's a lot of new development going on, that's going to increase your equity without you having to actually do any work. So follow, new stores opening, are they building new developments around there? Because that's going to bring a lot of value, new hospitals, new mall centers, and you can even check the county websites to see the plans. And, it's important to follow development because that's where the money is. That's where they're investing the money. That's where the home values are going to go up. So also you want to discuss your purchase goals. What do you want to get out of this? Are you looking for equity? Are you just looking for a nice spot? Do you need closet space? What's your timeline? Do you need to move in a few months? Do you have time? When does your lease end? You need a plan around all these types of things. And also, are you buying a second home? Are you investing, or is this going to be your primary home? Also, you want to talk about your home preferences, the size, the location, the numbers of bedrooms and bathrooms, if there's any non-negotiables, but you also want to be realistic. So if you're approved for, 250,000 in a certain area, that can get you a full house. But if you're looking in the city in DC, that's going to be more likely than a condo than anything. And sometimes people will decide to move, look a little bit further out of the main city if they want a little bit more space. So also you want to discuss your budget. And another important one I see a lot of people don't discuss during their consultations is showing availability. So some realtors are, are very strict about their time. They have strict office hours, about planning. I'm more of like a texting realtor on the go. So as far as showing availability, you should discuss that so you're not disappointed if you want to go see a property right now and they're not available, maybe on a Sunday, they're taking off, or on weekends. Sometimes, I have showing agents who can show for me if I'm not around. So just make sure that they have those kind of systems set up that will make it easier for you to see properties, because in real estate, I will say this a million times, time is of the essence. A lot of the contracts I've won have been because it's been the first day on market. We got there, we wrote the contract, and we got it in immediately. So you just have to kind of be ready to go. So step 2 is going to be when you actually get to go home shopping. This is actually a picture from one of my actual flips that I did with an investor. She flipped this home. It was a complete renovation. So your agent has access to an online system, which is called the multiple listing system. It's different for each area, depending on what state you're in. But this is where they can take the preferences that you discussed during your consultation and send you relevant properties that you will, eventually go out and see. If you want to place an offer on a property, what I typically suggest is to reach out to the lender. That's why you want to have a lender that answers the phone, communicates quickly and efficiently, because if you need numbers now for an offer you need to get in a couple hours, you don't have time to wait for a lender who's not going to be answering the phone or getting back to their email quickly. So, reach out to the lender, verify that the monthly payment is actually what you're comfortable with, because it can be different depending on taxes and things for different areas. And also a tip is to remember for condos and townhomes to consider the condo fees and HOA fees for the properties. So, it's just very important, especially if you're working with a FHA loan. Some condos are not FHA approved, just depending on, they call it the delinquency rate, which is what percentage of the people in the condo are behind on their dues. So if it's over a certain amount, then the condo won't be FHA approved. So that's another thing if you're working with an FHA loan to think about. Also, your agent should do a comparative market analysis to ensure the property is not overpriced, because you don't want to, that's going to help you craft your offer amount. When you do the comparative market analysis, you can see how much of a seller credit the other closings have gotten, what prices the other similar homes have sold at. And you want to look at these numbers to help inform your decision on what offer amount you want to do, and also take into consideration how competitive the market is. Step 3 is going to be actually making that offer on the home. You want to make sure your realtor also has a quick turnaround time on this. I can write offers in about 30, 40 minutes. You want to make sure that you're not delaying when you're interested in a home. So if you want to submit an offer on a home, I would submit that offer without delay. Again, time is of the essence. So you definitely just want to get that in as soon as possible. Sometimes people want to sleep on it overnight, but sometimes that can cost you the home. So you just have to realize if it's worth it to you to think on it an extra night, but just make sure you're doing the numbers, that you have all of your your wants and needs lined up. So you're looking at properties already aligned with your goals and that are, possibly can have offers put on them. So also make sure you read through the contract and understand all the deadlines, because you're going to be held to these deadlines. And make sure you ask questions to your agent about anything that you don't understand in the contract. And this is also where your pre-approval letter comes into play, that you did all that adulting and worked so hard to get as your very first step. This is where we attach it. That's usually I usually do a cover page, and then that's usually my second page in the contract, because that's what the seller wants to know is, are they approved for this amount? Can they afford this house? And even sometimes people are approved for a certain amount and then they have cash maybe to make up the difference over what they're not approved for, maybe a gift from family. People have different, ways to get gifts of funds. So your earnest money deposit is basically a good faith, showing that you have good faith, that you're really interested in the home. The earnest money deposit, it costs about 1% of the price of the home. So for a house that costs $300,000, the earnest money deposit would be about 3%. You can see here, I put about 1%, because if we're not in a competitive situation, I'm not going to give I'm not going to offer the highest amount of the earnest money deposit. I might say 2,000 or 2,500 instead of the full 1%. And also, if we are in a really competitive situation, sometimes I'll up the earnest money deposit, because that shows the seller that you're really interested in the property. So that's another negotiation tactic that I use sometimes. Yes, your earnest money deposit is refundable, and I'm going to discuss that in the next slide about contingencies, because that really is what protects you. Contingencies in the contract is what protects your earnest money deposit. And you want to follow those, because if you let your contingencies run out and then you try to get out the contract, the seller could possibly take your earnest money deposit. So once your offer is negotiated and all terms are agreed on, and they send you back the contract signed by the seller, that is when you have a ratified contract. Or you probably seen agents post, I'm under contract. That's what they mean. They won the contract, seller signed, returned it to them. Everybody's in agreement to all the terms, and you have a ratified contract. So step 4 is removing contingencies. So when a contract is written, there's some typical contingencies that we see, and they are to protect the buyer and allow you to get out of the contract if necessary. And it just keeps a good flow to the contract, so everyone knows kind of where these checkpoints are. The typical contingencies are the home inspection contingency. In DC, things were getting a little crazy with the competition. So some people were dropping their home inspection contingencies, or doing pre-inspections, or just doing as is, but doing an informational inspection. Even in the case that you really want a house and you do as is on the contract, I always recommend getting a home inspection, especially for first-time home buyers, because you just want to know what you're getting yourself into. I just had a client get a home inspection and they found termites at the property, which it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't, it was not too much termite damage. The price was only going to be about $500. But since we had a home inspection contingency, I was able to negotiate her a credit of $1,500 to take care of some of the repairs that were found on the home inspection. Again, depending on how competitive the situation is, you might not always be able to negotiate credit, but if you have a solid reason, especially when you're dealing with a first-time home buyer, I've been pretty successful in being able to negotiate a credit based off of that. So the home inspection contingency is usually your shortest contingency. usually about 3 to 7 days. 3 is if it's a really competitive situation, because to a seller, shorter contingencies and no contingencies are better, because it's, a cleaner contract. So if you're in a competitive situation, you want to do a shorter home inspection contingency and make sure you already have a home inspector in mind. I only do the short one because I have a home inspector in my, catalog who can always come next day or really quick. So that's the home inspection contingency is about 3 to 7 days, and your home inspection will cost you between $250 and $600, depending on the size of the home. It can be more if you're dealing with a mansion or, a huge estate. The next contingency will be your appraisal contingency, and that's typically about 10 to 16 days. The appraisal contingency is just you pay for the appraisal, but the lender orders it. So it's usually 10 to 16 days, and it just allows time for the lender to order the appraisal for you to get it back. And because the appraisal is important, because they're not going to lend you more money than the house appraises for. So it's very important to make sure that you get that appraisal in, and that your agent talks to the lender and make sure that they will be able to get the appraisal back in that time period that is listed on the contract. And that cost is going to be around $475 to $650 for your appraisal. Unless you need to rush it. If it's a competitive situation, there's sometimes rush fees involved. And then the longest contingency is your financing contingency. That's typically 14 to 25 days. A full length contract is about 30, 45 days. So the financing contingency always covers typically almost the entire contract. And that basically says that if I don't get financing for the house, I can't buy it. You just get a rejection letter from the lender and submit that to the seller before the end of your contingency period. And then you can get your money back. You don't want to miss that date, because the seller can definitely take your earnest money deposit if you didn't meet the deadline, didn't submit a rejection letter, and you just don't want to end up in that circumstance, please. I've never lost the earnest money deposit, and we're hoping that I will never will. So step 5 is going to be your title search and final financing. So like I said, from a ratified contract to closing, the timeline is typically about 30 to 45 days. So during this time, the title company and the title company is like a conglomerate of attorneys and other professionals that will research the property, do a survey, and make sure that you have a clean title. And clean title just means that the property is free and clear, you own it, nobody's cousin twice removed is going to come knocking on your door saying that they own this home after you close with a title company. Not going to happen, because they did all the work to make sure that the title was clean and clear and that you are the sole owner of the property. So during this time, you'll also go through what they call underwriting, which is when the loan officer submits it to the processor, and they may ask additional questions about your finances. They may want additional information from you, financial information. So make sure you have all those documents, all together. You would have already had them for your pre-approval, like your W-2, your all your financial documents, taxes, all of that. So what you want to make sure that you get to the lender, you get the lender everything they need quickly. And if the title company requests anything from you, you want to get back to them really quickly, so it keeps the process moving along smoothly. So when you're getting closer to closing, you'll receive what they call a clear to close. That basically, you'll receive what they call conditional approval yet, which means you're almost approved for the loan. They're just going through some final stages. And then you'll receive a clear to close, saying that this loan is clear to close. That's when you're like, whew, I'm good. I did everything. We're clear to close. That's when you can start to celebrate. And then, beginning celebrations. Don't buy a car or anything. No major purchases. No, don't do anything. The easiest route is stable and, no major purchases. Don't show up to closing in a new car because they check your credit at the closing table. So do not make any major purchases. Don't buy furniture before you close. Okay. So you're going to receive your, what they call closing disclosure, at least 3 days. That's the rule at least 3 days prior to closing. And that's going to have all of your like final numbers on it. And yeah, and that'll come from the lender. It'll have all your final numbers and everything, and you'll sign that prior to closing. So at this point, you actually would have made it to the closing table. See, it's not so stressful. 5 easy steps and you're there. So you would have made it to the closing table at this point. And in the next slide, I'm just going to show you an example of a typical closing. So I think that I like to celebrate life and celebrate accomplishments. So I think it's a huge deal. And I like to do the absolute most for my clients to make sure that they feel celebrated and really feel special on this day that they, you know, did something huge. So I'm just gonna show you this video, this short video, just showing a typical closing. Okay, so that just showed a little bit. It showed a little bit. It showed a little bit of the final walkthrough. So that's when you, right before closing, you'll do a final walkthrough where you will just make sure that the house is, you know, the ceiling hasn't fallen in prior to closing. So you schedule the final walkthrough usually the day of settlement. Unless you have an early settlement, then sometimes you do it the night before. So you do your final walkthrough, and then closing day is the big celebration, gifts, you sign at the table. And a lot of times first-time home buyers, some people sign remotely, but a lot of times first-time home buyers like to really enjoy the experience and sign at the title company. And there will be a closing attorney there who will explain the final documents to you and help you sign everything. And also your agent will be there to help you. So I just want to say thank you everyone for your time. See, it wasn't too stressful, right? I hope I helped you understand the real estate process a little bit more. And I am accepting any questions. And before I take a look at the questions in the chat box, on the next slide, I just wanted to say thank you to you all I was super excited to do this workshop and put this together for you all. So I actually put together an official home buyer's guide. It can be used in any market. And if you live outside of the DC, Maryland, and Virginia area and you need a referral to a good real estate agent, I can always refer to other areas and help you with vetting, with the vetting process and, you know, finding a realtor in your area that will work for you. But all you have to do is scan this QR code and it'll take you to the page where you can download my home buyer's guide. It's super comprehensive. It has a glossary and can be used in any market to help you with your home purchase. So I hope you enjoy it. I put a lot of effort into it. And I really hope that you love it, and it's super visually appealing. So I'm actually very excited about it. And you guys are the first ones that get to download it. And I am going to review some questions right now.
Sure thing. Alleyah, I can read them off to you if you'd like.
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. So let's see. How would you know that your loan officer is qualified?
So it would, give me 1 second. Chime's going off. So your loan officer, you want to just ask them questions about their communication, and you can really pick up from I mean, from first communications, when you first got in contact with them, did they answer the phone? Were they communicative to you? Did they explain things in detail? Really don't ignore red flags when it comes to a loan officer. Are they patient? Are they helpful? You know, you just want to do a personality assessment really and make sure that they are going to they're going to match your personality and also really guide you through the process and care about you specifically. And the communication is key. They need to answer the phone, they need to answer their email, and they need to be responsive, because if you lose a house because you can't get a pre-approval letter, then there's no, you know, there's nothing that you can do. You know, that's your lender that you picked. So, you know, it's really important that you pick a good, solid lender.
I think also they were, follow up to that was, how do you know if they're qualified for the particular type of loan that you want?
Oh, yes.
Their word at it, or do they have to show some sort of documentation that?
So you can either ask them directly, or some of the loan programs, like I know for the Maryland Mortgage Program, they have a list of approved lenders and a list of approved companies that that if those lenders are with that company, then, you know, it'll show. So I would look at the loan program that you're interested in and see if they have an approved lender and an approved lender list. And if they don't, then just ask directly if, you know, do you offer this home buying program? Because sometimes the lender, even if they don't, if they're a good lender, they can be like, I mean, I don't do it now, but I can, you know, I can do the application for it. I've had my lender not be approved for a program yet, but she was right on it and got, you know, did the application and got approved immediately. So communication is key when it comes to your mortgage lender.
Already answered this, but just in case, how long is a pre-approval valid before it expires, if it even does expire?
It does expire. 90 days is pretty much the maximum. So you want to make sure you get that approval within about a 3-month range, and then don't make any major purchases to make sure that you are using that pre-approval correctly, you know, so and that it's not going to change, because if your debt to income ratio changes, then your approval will change, you know, your approval amount will change. So make sure that you keep it, get your approval, and don't make any major moves. But they are pretty easy to renew, even though it might count as another hard pull on your credit. Another tip that I would say is that when you're comparing mortgages, comparing more than three mortgages is kind of excessive. Sometimes I like to recommend my clients do 2 mortgage brokers and a credit union, just to kind of get a good you know, breadth of options. But if you apply for multiple mortgages within 14 to 45 days, it actually only counts as 1 hit on your credit. So that's actually a huge benefit. So you can do a lot of comparison and it will only count as 1 hard pull.
Is there a sample contract that folks tonight can access to see what they look like?
So if you email me, I can email you like a blank sample contract if you want to see, just so you can get comfortable with looking at a contract. I didn't include that in the buyer's guide because it's so different for each area. But if you email me, then I can share that with you, no problem.
Okay. What is the typical realtor's rate, and is it negotiable?
So that it's illegal, no price fixing. So yes, everything is negotiable. There's no standard in the industry at all. But typically sellers pay real estate agent fees. I've seen around like 6% real estate agent fees, and then they split that with so if, let's say I'm selling your house, then if I charge you 6%, then I'm going to be sharing that 6% with the agent that brings the buyer. So that's how it works. And it's called buyer's advantage, because the buyers typically don't pay the seller's fee, the agent fees.
Okay. How is the monthly PMI payment amount calculated? And also, thanks for doing this great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited you guys are all here. So that would be a question for Ingrid. She should be in here if she's able to unmute. Ingrid is one of my awesome preferred lenders. I probably do about 85% of my deals with Ingrid, and she is fantastic. So Ingrid, if you're in here and you're able to answer the question on PMI, that would be awesome.
Sure, absolutely. So mortgage insurance is added to a conventional loan in increments of percentages. There's 97%, 95, 90, 85, and then it disappears. So the mortgage insurance decreases. It's based on loan size, loan to value, and credit score.
Okay. Yes, Ingrid does do refinances, and she is the best. I love Ingrid. I can't say enough good things.
Another question. You mentioned that closing costs are often covered by the seller. How much are closing costs typically?
So closing costs are typically, and this is also, this information is also in the buyer's guide, because I know sometimes it's a lot of information to take in. But the closing costs are typically about around 2% to 6% of the price of the property. And that depends on if you get seller credit. In a competitive market, you're way less likely to get seller credit. So don't expect it. The maximum that you can, that loan officers will, or loan limits will let you receive of seller credit is 3%. So that's the maximum that you can get in any circumstance. But it's negotiable. So sometimes if you need closing cost assistance and you have a little bit more wiggle room on your pre-approval, you can up the amount that you're offering on the property and then ask for some closing costs, because closing costs come from the seller's bottom line. So they're going to want to see that number as low as possible. So if you offset it with a higher price and then get that cash to close, then that's another way that you can work it. So seller credits are possible, but it depends on the property, on how competitive the situation is, and on the negotiation tactics that your realtor uses.
If I pick a real estate agent who hasn't worked with my lender of choice, should I change my real estate agent or my lender?
No, you shouldn't, as long as both parties are able to communicate well. It's all about teamwork. So I've worked with lenders before that aren't my preferred lenders, and that's fine with me as long as the lender communicates well and gets the job done. That's all that matters. Everybody in the transaction should just be eyes focused on closing. It's not about who the agent is or who the lender is. It's about teamwork to focus on the goal. So you don't have to switch you don't have to switch the lender or the real estate agent. As long as they're working well together and they're both consummate professionals and can work together to get the goal done, that's all that really matters.
What do you think about house hacking a duplex as a first investment property?
I think that's best case scenario. That's best case scenario house hacking. So if you can get approved for a loan large enough to afford a 2-unit property, and a lot of people don't know, you can do FHA loan with 3.5% down, and you can use that to purchase a multi-unit property if you can afford it. So definitely, it's a smart investment decision, and you will hopefully greatly or almost eliminate your housing costs by doing that. So I 100% would suggest house hacking if it's possible for you. And house hacking is just when you buy something that has multiple units and then rent a part out. It doesn't necessarily have to be like a whole 2-unit structure. Sometimes it's just a row home with a basement with a separate entrance that you could rent out, or Airbnb. I've had clients do that, and it's been really successful for them. So yeah, any way to make more passive income, we're accepting it. Okay.
Are there any implications to the loan process for someone who has a green card?
There may be specifics that you need. I think Ingrid would know this question a little better.
Yeah, I'm here. We just need a copy of the green card, and then it can't be expiring. It has to, either the application for renewal has to be in, or we have to just document that there's enough time. But a green card is no problem at all.
Okay, awesome.
I think this next question is going to be on everyone's mind. Given the current market, and interest rates. Do you recommend waiting to buy? If so, when do you think the market will be more buyer friendly?
Okay, so interest rates actually in the grand scheme of things are way lower than they've ever been. So let's say I have one of the properties that my grandmother invested in from like 2008. We looked at the interest rate on that loan. It was 7.5% was her interest rate in 2008 when she got a loan to purchase this condo. So if you can see the difference now, interest rates, I just had a client close with a 3.25 interest rate, a 3.5% rate interest rate. So interest rates actually are good right now. They are kind of inching up. But for a buyer that's looking for a good deal, I would suggest either looking at properties that have maybe been on the market for a little bit longer. There's not necessarily anything wrong with a property that's been on the market a little bit longer. Sometimes buyers just don't really have a big imagination and they just can't see past small cosmetic issues. And another good, I had a lot of buyers take advantage of buying in the winter. People are very, just people's natural habits affect the market. So in the wintertime, you typically get better deals because there's less people looking. People are distracted, focused on the holidays. So I had a lot of buyers take advantage of getting really good deals during these winter months. And if you're in this DC area, the condo market right now is flying under the radar. So a lot of my buyers got really, really good deals on condos because during the pandemic, people were kind of leaving the city and wanted more land and were forgetting about these condos, but it's not going to stay like that forever. So investing in them now and, investing in them now either to live in or to buy as an investment property and Airbnb-ing it or renting it out definitely is a smart decision. In the DC area, the condo market has just been, I don't know why, it's just been laying low right now. And my buyers have been getting really good deals. So winter market is really good for buyers. Don't give up. And I don't think, I don't think that the market is going to crash based on what I'm seeing, because the appraisal values are making sense. Just so you guys understand a little bit more, when the market crashed in 2008, it was no man's land. Like people were doing anything. They were using no doc loans. Literally, you could walk in and get a loan with zero documents. You could just say, I'm Joe Blow and I make $1 million a year, and they would actually give you a loan for it. So there were things happening like balloon rates. So your rate would start out at one thing and then it could balloon all the way up and your payment would go up by a crazy amount. So, and then also at that point in the market, people were, my parents were working through this time. My father was an appraiser. My mom was a realtor during this time in 2008. Back then, the agents could pick their own appraisers. So they would pick an appraiser that they knew to give them the value that they needed on the house. And it wasn't even the correct value. So the home values were not correct. The loans were not making any sense. So that's why the market crashed. None of that is happening anymore. The loans are very regulated. The lenders are the only ones that can order appraisals. So that's why I don't see the market crashing. And the earlier that you're able to buy and get in and start accruing equity and your value appreciating, the better. So I know a lot of millennials are waiting for the market to crash, but I just, based on my work in the industry, I just don't think that that's where things are headed. So I would just focus on finding a realtor that is able to scan the market and identify where the deals are, following development, and buying maybe in the winter months if you're really looking for a steal.
Where does the real estate lawyer come into play, and at what stage do you get the lawyer?
So you don't necessarily need a real estate lawyer. I mean, if you want to have them review documents for you, but the documents the contracts that we fill, we don't write them. We only fill contracts. Real estate agents are not lawyers by any means. So we fill contracts. We know the language that that needs to be used, but we only fill them. We do not write them. So it's not necessary really to get a real estate lawyer unless you're working with a off-market transaction, maybe where you're not using a standard contract, or you're doing something like creative financing, using seller financing. Some people do that where the seller will actually let you pay them over time and with the interest rate like a bank. So in that case, I would maybe get a real estate lawyer, but just for a standard transaction, it's not really necessary. And I wouldn't expend really any extra money on that unless you're having problems in your transaction or your agent. But there, in every state, there's a guarantee fund. Every agent has to pay into a guarantee fund. And that basically means that if your agent does something that they were not supposed to do in a transaction, that you feel was unethical, you actually can apply to the guarantee fund to get your money back. In Maryland, I think up to $40,000 you could get back. Like, let's say they didn't pay attention to the contract and you lost your earnest money deposit. You could possibly file with the guarantee fund that all of us agents pay into to get your money back.
What is the number one thing you want to share with first-time buyers in more competitive markets that they should consider? Cough, cough, for all my New York City friends on this call.
Oh, New York. I mean, I'm like, do you guys even have it worse than DC? Because DC is pretty crazy right now. Like, people are just, I don't even want to inspect the house. Just give it to me. I'll take it however it is. So my tips would just be to, again, winter market is always good. To make sure that if you're looking at places to either the best times to get an offer in are when it first comes on the market. So the best is to either be the first contract or the last contract. So look for something that just came on the market or something that's been on the market for a while that you can maybe put a little sweat equity into, and it'll really shine. So don't be afraid of a slight fixer upper. Of course, get a home inspection so that you know what you're getting into, but just be a little bit more open-minded. Remember that this is not I hope you don't live in the first place you buy for the rest of your life. This is just your first investment. You're planting the seed so that you can have leverage and be able to borrow, maybe use this first property to get to your final property that you want to own, your dream home. So just remember that this is an investment decision, and buy a smart investment, and you just have to be open, make sure you have a real estate agent that is good at, negotiating. That's what's really going to make all the difference. And also having a reputable realtor is important. I've won some contracts just because of my reputation in the industry over other contracts who maybe even were more than mine, but they were sure that it will be a professional transaction working with me. So it's important to have a realtor that, is going to work hard for you and your best interest, and scan the market and really get out there to make sure that, they're able to find you something that will work. It is. And don't be discouraged if you lose a few contracts. That might happen. People lose contracts all the time, but I always say this: what's for you won't miss you. And, just stay dedicated. Don't give up. It is a competitive market and it's hard, but you will find something out there. Stay encouraged.
You mentioned the CMA. Is there another way to see the values of homes in your area?
It's pretty much based off of the past home values. I mean, the appraisal is the ultimate, official sign of value. But the comparable properties are really the best way to do it. I mean, you can look up comparable the Zestimates and the Redfin estimates are always wrong. So you could just trash those. They literally are always wrong. But you just have to look at the comparable properties in the area. Your real estate agent should always do a CMA, even if sometimes they're not written. They can always present one to you. But even if I'm in a quick, where we have to put in a contract right now, I have an app where I can do a quick CMA on my phone and show that to my client. So make sure you at least discuss that before you put in the offer. What's everything? What are the comparable properties selling around here? You don't want to, if everything else is selling for $250, why am I paying $300,000 for this house? Is it worth it? Does it, what is making this property worth more? Because when the appraisal comes back, that can completely ruin the deal if your agent didn't do a CMA and make sure that the value is correct for the house.
Do lenders need to be local, or can they be online off the internet?
I prefer local lenders. They can be off the internet, but you have to make sure that person off the internet is going to be communicating with you. Usually local lenders are a little bit better with communication because, you know, they know the area, they know the market. You can use a big lender, but I just typically suggest communication is key. If they're communicating well, then it can work. If they seem too busy or they're not really getting enough attention to your file, then I would have a backup option. You can have multiple pre-approval letters, so you can use whichever lender is best. Not multiple realtors, only sign on with one and make sure you end the relationship before you move on to the next one.
If you've just completed a master's program, is that considered part of work history when looking at financing options for approval?
Yes, I just did. Actually, Ingrid helped me with this. I just did a deal where my client had just graduated with her master's from grad school, and she had only been working for 6 months out of grad school, and she was approved by Ingrid because her past her grad school counts actually as work history. So that applies to everybody. Your grad school, your time in school counts as work history. So you know you don't have to work for an additional 2 years or 1.5 years after you get out of after you get out of grad school. You can use that as work history, which is super beneficial and can help you get into a place earlier. And also for doctors and lawyers, they typically have 100% financing programs, and they typically can get approved earlier too, because they know the trajectory of they're called like professional loans. And also for entrepreneurs, there's like entrepreneur loans, or like, you know, where they call them like bank statement loans sometimes, where they typically need a little bit more, but there are loan programs for entrepreneurs as well, people that own businesses.
This goes along with schooling. What would you recommend to folks with student loans and its impact on the debt to income ratio?
Okay, I'm going to speak on this a little bit, and then I'm also going to let Ingrid answer, but they actually just changed the rules in our favor. I know the student loan situation is crazy right now. So student loans actually only count as either 1% of what they are or whatever the monthly payment is. So it's not as detrimental to your debt to income ratio as you think. And Ingrid, do you want to say anything on this?
Yes, absolutely. So on student loans, you know, I can decision a conventional loan by Freddie or Fannie. Fannie counts 1% of the balance or the actual monthly payment. Freddie counts 0.5% of the balance. FHA just went to 0.5% or the actual monthly payment. So what I advise is, if we can, go in and pull what the income-based payment plan is. I say go and look, see if the income-based payment is the absolute lowest, because we don't go by the balance, we go by the minimum monthly payment. And if you can go in and pull something that we can use to update the credit report and show a lower monthly payment, then we absolutely can do that. But if you just show 0 on the credit report, we have to default to 0.5% or 1%, which a lot of people have deferred payments right now. And so we'll try and use 0.5%. But if we can get your monthly payment before or after deferment, we'll use that.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, so see, it's a little bit better than you think. And this is also why I always suggest a lot of people are just worried, and I know it creates a lot of worry when you don't exactly know, but take out the guesswork and contact the lender directly, and they actually can help you. Even if you're not qualified at the moment, they can give you the exact steps that you have to do to become qualified. So you don't have to worry about guessing what the next best steps are. You could reach out to your lender, work with them over a certain time period, and get to your goal of becoming approved. So don't feel bad if you're not approved the first time. It's just a process. They'll tell you do A, B, D, C, and E, pay this first, pay off this next, and then you'll actually have a solid action plan, and it just takes out the guesswork.
Here's another question for Ingrid. How does mortgage lending people on work visas like H-1B?
So there's a list, and different lenders an H-1B would be fine, but there's different visas. We actually have a list approved by Freddie and Fannie. And we go down the list and make sure that we can lend on it. All the typical ones are fine to lend, but there are some, if they're a temporary visa or only for a short period of time, those may be more difficult, but there's actually a list, and that would be just a simple phone call to a lender.
And here's another one. Should you pay off your car loan to reduce your debt to income ratio?
Ingrid?
So my answer is talk to the lender first. Call your lender, because sometimes I have people paying down their debt, but we don't look at the balances. We look at the minimum monthly payments, and you may benefit more because you need more money to purchase and you qualify with the debt. So I would talk to a lender and get the whole picture before paying off any debt. And it's normally, if you want to put more, if you need more money cash to close, it's better not to pay off the debt if you qualify. If you have to pay it off in order to qualify, then yes, go ahead. But I normally say, let's get the whole picture. And I may say, with the car payment, you qualify for this. And if you're happy with that, you're good to go. Don't pay it off. If you want to qualify for more, or you're out looking and it's more for what we've pre-approved, then yes, you can go ahead and pay off the car. But I would wait for your best option, just in case the property found needs repairs, bathrooms replaced, anything like that. If it's not needed, I would wait until after closing to do it.
Awesome. Yes. Don't guess. Contact your lender. This is why they know the market.
Here's another one that probably is for Ingrid. If you're getting money from a family member towards your down payment, how does that impact your loan approval?
So you definitely can get a gift. A gift is normally defined as a blood relative. So an aunt, an uncle, a fiance would work. But a gift is perfectly fine. There is gift documentation that you have to follow. There's a gift letter that has to be completed. We have to show the transfer of the money to you, but a gift is perfectly fine.
All right. I don't see any more questions unless folks have come up with something in the past. I want to throw it in there. Okay, asking again, does the H-1B visa change your loan rate?
No, not at all. The loan rate is based on loan to value, credit score, and product type.
Oh, thanks. Thank you so much.
You're getting a lot of thanks, and this was awesome in the chat.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Ingrid, for joining the call tonight. It's super helpful, and I really appreciate you for coming.
My pleasure, and as always, you did an awesome job.
Thank you.
There was a little bit of thing, someone commented that they maxed on the QR code, so I don't know if that's something that you can address later, and we can do follow-up emails to folks.
Oh, yeah, sure. And if the QR code maxed out, then feel free, you can go to the website. There's a home buyer guide link, and you can download it right there. So feel free to just go directly to the website. Sorry about that.
No worries. Well, Alleyah and Ingrid, thank you so much. We really appreciate this. This was very informative. And this is one of our larger audiences. So a lot of interest in home buying. Great,
thank you. And if anybody has any questions, you can always feel free to email me, and I can help you in any market that you possibly have questions in. I know it's a lot to take in as a first-time home buyer, but you guys can do this, and the generational wealth for your family is so important. The small steps you're taking now will definitely pay off in the future. My grandmother was one single woman, and she purchased properties by herself and made it happen, over 5 properties. So be inspired by her, and I'm just thankful to be a part of such a great line of women, to be able to be here in front of you all today.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Alleyah. And with that, we'll sign off. Everyone have a fantastic. I'll let you know that this will be available on the alumni website next week. And we'll be sure to follow up with a survey, as well as with a link to where it's housed on our alumni website. All righty. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Janine. And thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.